Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode where I sat down with Rebecca from Hawaii, and she's a menstrual cycle and feminine embodiment coach. This episode is so important because I know that so many people struggle with symptoms relating to their hormones, their cycle, PCOS, what to do about contraception, and we really did speak about a huge range of these topics, so please listen in, and I really look forward to hearing what you learned from this episode. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Wisdom Within. I'm so excited to be joined by Rebecca in Hawaii, my first guest in Hawaii. Woo! We're going to dive into all things the feminine today because I've been a fan of Rebecca's Instagram for ages. I don't know if she knows that, I just told her that just now. And she's inspired me so much. Again, she probably doesn't know that, so this is all new to her, but she's inspired me so much to really live according to my cycle. And I think, as you know, and who the listeners all know, so many people don't even know what that means. And so we're living in a very exciting time where we're coming back to those ancient traditions of learning what it means to live with your cycle, honoring your femininity, and really living your whole life in a different way. It is really a paradigm shift. And so maybe you can talk a bit about what you do firstly and say hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I appreciate it. My name is Rebecca. I am the creator and founder of Blume Womb, and I am a menstrual cycle coach and a womb practitioner in short. And I feel like that name, if people are like, wait, what do you do? Like, what does that mean exactly? And really, it's the intention of my work is to bring women back into their bodies by teaching them about their cyclical nature and really helping them track their cycle, helping them live with their cycle so that they can embody themselves more as a woman and really understand who they are as a woman, how they function as a woman. And there's so many more things that come into that, but that is really the essence of my work, is just bringing women back into their bodies and into their femininity and their power within that.
Yeah, so beautiful. So let's dive into this. So for people who don't know and have never done this, what is it to live in according to your cycle? Because until recently, I did literally not even know.
Yeah.
And so it sounds now, I'm like, well, it's obvious. You just live according to your cycle. But it's like, what does that really mean?
Yeah. Yeah, living with your cycle according to your cycle, your unique pattern. It really means where we're tuning into our body, our monthly changes. And so really when we're talking about our cycle, we have about a 28-day, give or take. I mean, it's probably anywhere between 25 to 35 days on average for women. And tuning into that monthly cycle where hormones shift throughout that span. And with that, we tap into these different changes that are going on in our bodies, but also energetically, emotionally, spiritually, these changes also occur. And really understanding that everything in our lives moves through a cycle. And when we're tapping into our own cycle, we're tapping into that hormonal cycle, which also our cycle in itself correlates to the way that the earth cycles. So if we think about 4 seasons, which is a year, the 12 months, all of that moves through a certain cycle that we also move through every single month. A day cycle also moves through the same cycle. A lunar cycle moves through that too. And so understanding when we tap into these cycles, we really can tap into moving with the world, with ourselves, with our body versus against it, and really being more in tune with the earth in that way and with our bodies in that way. So that's like the essence of it, I'd say. It's just allowing ourselves to come back into connection with cyclical living.
Yeah, and you can probably see me going like, because I think it sounds simple again, but like once you do it, like the depth of like how beautiful it is like actually like there's not really words.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's just coming back into a remembrance of how we're supposed to be living, you know? And so when you start doing, you're like, oh my God, there's this big relief, I think, especially for women, because we've been taught to fully neglect that in so many ways, you know?
Exactly.
And it really is coming back to the feminine. And also there's been such an imbalance within our world where we're so like, we don't live in cycles. We just live in this very straightforward way, and having to constantly be in growth and bloom. We can't ever be in the state of um, like rest and decay, death, you know, like that's not like, if we're looking at that part of the cycle, we're told don't go there. Like you have to be in constant growth and bloom. And that's like just not normal for any human really, but especially for women. And we have such a beautiful gift that we get to tap into this cyclical nature of ourselves. And so when we start doing it, it's really just like this, oh my God, I remember who I am in this, you know, which
Yeah,
is, yeah, it's so incredible.
exactly. Like all you need to do is look to nature to see that like death is a natural part of life,
Right.
and embracing that as beautiful, because I
Yeah.
think part of it is so many people are so in resistance because we're taught that like having a bleed is like a nuisance or an inconvenience
Mhm,
until you want to have
mhm,
a baby, obviously, but like yeah, you just see it as something like, I mean, I used to be like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, I just want to
mhm,
keep going. Like, why
mhm,
do we have to have this? Like,
mhm,
being a woman sucks. So, what is the beauty of it for you?
mm. Ooh, that's a good question.
Thanks. Whenever someone says that to me on my podcast, I'm like, oh, thank you.
Well, it's good to reflect on it, because I always, obviously, I do this work with so many women, and then coming back to myself, like, what is the beauty for it for me? Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, like, when I just think about when I first started living with my cycle, it was this coming back into my feminine. Like I really have had, like, for years I was very much in my masculine, and I burned myself out doing that. And I completely neglected the rest aspect of myself, and just the going inward, and the yeah, the just sitting in stillness more. And I mean, there's so many qualities when it comes to being feminine, but I think those qualities often get neglected in our world, where it's like, yeah, we're, like I was saying earlier, it's like those just aren't praised. And so I really took a year away from work. I like decided to stop every single business I've ever started. Um, and I just like sat with myself for a year, and I really came
Wow.
back into the softness of just like living according to what is was alive within me and at that time, you know,
Yeah.
versus pushing or having to figure anything out, or having to figure something out. And so for me, this the living with your cycle, it's like just meeting yourself every single day. Like when I talk about cycle tracking, it's a daily practice where you tune in to see what's alive and to see what is coming up for you at this part of your cycle. And it's just the meeting of yourself in that way through your cycle, through your womb, which is really the purest, like the essence of where your power lies as a woman. Your womb is so powerful in that way. And so when you create this relationship to it and to your cycle, you really create this relationship to your power that so many women have never tapped into. And so I think for myself, it's just this like, yeah, just coming back to your power every single day in small intentional ways.
So beautiful. So, yeah, let's go into your story because I don't know that much about it. Obviously, yeah, you mentioned that you were in your masculine before, which
Hmm.
doesn't surprise me because most people are.
Yeah.
But what was your main like drive or main moment that made
Yeah.
you be like, okay, like I need to stop what I'm doing?
I never expected myself to do this work. Like
Yeah.
it just was never like present in my life the way it is now. It was really me having to balance back into my feminine. That's what brought me into this work, and just like the craving of like wanting to work with women. I just didn't know in what container that would
Yeah.
be. And so, yeah, a few years ago, I had like I had built different network marketing businesses, found success in those, but it was such a masculine way of working that it totally took me out of my feminine in many ways, or not even realizing what I like that I was doing that. And so I ended up yeah, like I was saying earlier, taking just a year away from work. I kind of had to. I had no choice because I got kind of sick because I burnt myself out. Like my body was exhausted. Any little task felt like running a marathon. And so building a business was like impossible. And yeah, so I decided to take a year away from all of it. And then that's when I started learning about the womb and about the cycle. And um, I took a course on. I thought I wanted to become a doula. My best friend just got pregnant during that time, and she's like, "Oh my god, I need a doula! Like, you should totally become a doula." And I was like, "I've always been intrigued by the whole doula thing," and so I did a 4-day doula course to just like see if that's what I wanted to do. And I loved it so much. It was incredible, but it wasn't like I knew that birth and working with like pregnant women wasn't exactly it was not the exact niche I wanted to work with that, but I knew I wanted to work with that area. And then I found a course on just learning about the menstrual cycle. And then when I was reading through the landing page of that course, I was like, this is it. Without me even knowing that that's what I was searching for, I was like reading through and I was like, it resonated so deeply. And I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And so I took that course and I got to another course on to get my certification. And then from there, I've taken like so many different courses on so many different areas. And through that, I was learning so many different things. And so I was like, I wanted to start Instagram account to share this knowledge with people, but I also wanted to make it like fun and add in my own little like way of sharing it, which is where this like, I mean, a lot of people would call my accounts like partly meme account, I guess, which I feel like I don't love the word meme because I feel like it takes away from like the magic of what
No,
the
yours is
knowledge
so
actually is.
amazing.
Yeah,
Like
thank you.
you can tell how much thought you put into it. Like
Yeah,
I
and
go to children's conferences.
every post I
Yeah,
really put in like so much
your
knowledge or so much
devotion.
intention because
Yeah.
yeah, it's just it means so much to me. But I've done that from the very beginning when I started my Instagram account, and it was an account that I'd started years ago, and then I like restarted it and rebranded it. I had like 5 more followers, and then a few months later, I had like 5,000 followers, and a few months later, I had like 20,000 followers, and I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" How it just like kept on growing, um, and just the resonance that women were experiencing with it. I was like, "It's wild how this knowledge it saved my life." It feels like, and then now I can see how it's like the messages I receive every single day. I'm like, I didn't realize the impact that an Instagram account can have, you know?
Mm,
Anyway,
no.
so that's kind of how Blume Womb started. And it's still like, it's like a year and a half old pretty much. It's not like that old of an
Wow.
account or of a brand, but
Wow.
so far it's been the best thing I've ever created. And I'm so grateful for it.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing your story. And it's just so beautiful to see how like the thread of just listening and knowing deeply when something resonates and just
Yes.
acting from that space of devotion. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just so beautiful. And also the fact so many people resonate. I mean, I have the same thing because I've been in this space and I'm now like, this is common knowledge. But then I come
Mm-hmm.
back here and I'm like, no one knows what I'm talking about. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's actually quite nice to see that contrast. Be like, wait, like people need to know about this information. And so, yeah, I wanted to go into a bit about different problems, which I'm sure you see your clients having. I know you didn't say you have them, but I think will be useful for people because I think so many people have irregular cycles and so
Mm,
they're like, oh well, how do I like track my cycle
mm,
when I don't when it's so irregular?
yeah.
So that's one thing. I also
Yeah,
did like a poll, not a poll, but I was like asking my friends like, what do you want to ask, because like everyone has different relationships with their cycle and I wanted to like
totally.
hear from people, so that was one of the main ones that came up.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of women experience that for sure. The thing is, if we think, right, let me rephrase this. When it comes to irregular cycles, I think a lot of the times we're like women are like, I can't track my cycle because it's irregular, but that's exactly when we should be taking care and attention to our cycles and tracking it, because our cycle needs attention when it's out of balance. Our womb needs attention when it's out of balance, and so bringing in the practice of cycle tracking. And when I'm talking about cycle tracking, I'm not talking about downloading an app and seeing where you're at in that way. I'm talking about like, and I have a free PDF for this in my bio if anyone is wanting it. But like having a physical journal or a physical cycle tracker that you print out and you write down your cycle signs, what you are experiencing emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever else, every single day through your hormones and through your cycle, and taking time to really just be intentional with understanding your cycle, understanding its pattern, even if it's irregular. And that in itself, it's crazy what that practice in itself can do. Like, I've had women that have had irregular cycles or really long cycles, and just starting to track their cycle, it like regulates it, because I'm such a true believer that like I'm a believer that literally the core essence of your cycle, it's like, or the underlining problem, I guess, from any cycle imbalances is it starts with an emotional imbalance. Your cycle is such a reflection of your emotional world. And so, and also your bleed and your blood holds emotions. And so when we create this like intentional practice with it, and the somatic practice too, that's when it really can start regulating. And so, yeah, just bringing in that practice where every single day you're sitting down, it can literally be like 3 to 5 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be like a crazy long thing, where you're writing down in a physical journal or a physical cycle tracker what you're experiencing. And again, that in itself is a practice that will help regulate your cycles. And then there's obviously so many other things depending on the woman, what's going on in her life, really taking care of your emotional world, taking care of your nervous system, like regulating that, super important, stress levels, all of that. There's obviously herbs that we can bring in. But that's really the practice that I take my clients through, is just learning your cycle by tracking it in that way. And then understanding how each of the different, like the 4 phases of your cycle also shows up for you, and what they're trying to, like the medicine that they have for you, because they each have their own medicine.
I laughed at the bit because I was having a conversation with my mum because I was talking about like period cramps and how like just by like paying attention, talking to my womb, like just like allowing myself to rest without guilt on my bleed, they've just literally almost gone away. And she was like,
Mm,
"What are you talking about?" And I was just like, "It sounds so crazy that something so simple, just your attention and your love and your connection with
yeah.
yourself can have such big shifts." And like I
Yeah.
know that people who are like super scientific in inverted commas will be like, "What do you mean? Like that's not proven." And I'm like, "Well, it worked."
Totally. Yeah. That I think is the first thing to take care of, is just the way that like your relationship to your cycle and your bleed. That in itself heals so much. It's crazy, but
Yeah, and
it's
just like
true.
loving each part and being like, okay, now I'm in my like
Yeah.
flirty fun, and now I'm like cocooning, and now I'm like, and just being like, even in the depths of that emotion, just like being in it, and just
Right.
like finding almost pleasure in the drama of all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, totally. Not
Yeah,
resisting it, but really surrendering to it for sure. Yeah.
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 And so when you work with people on their hormones, this is something I wanted to ask, was just like, because sometimes like you can probably tell with all the courses you've done like what hormones are out of balance based on the symptoms, but do you work with like any testing, like of actual getting your bloods tested, or do you mostly work on just like based on what they're presenting, or a mix?
My scope of practice is I can't heal, treat, or diagnose. So I don't work with that. That's you'd have to go to a hormone specialist to work with that. I'm a menstrual cycle coach. And so what that means is I help you build a relationship to your cycle and understanding your cycle and educating you on your cycle.
I was just wondering what you recommend to people, because it feels like it's like either a gynecologist or that, and I'm like,
Mhm.
but sometimes it is good to know, like, if you want to see inside your like actual hormones. So
Totally.
do you ever recommend people to stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, hormone tests are great, but I would say before you take a hormone, especially like the hormone test that I would recommend is like the Dutch test, but Dutch tests they're pretty expensive. I
Dutch
don't
test,
know if you in Europe they have the Dutch test too, but that is the test that I would like recommend just to really because your hormones obviously fluctuate throughout the month. And so just taking a blood test on just one day of the month just to check your hormones, you need to do a test that checks it throughout the whole cycle to see if every hormone, like if the hormone levels are in a healthy range. But before you do that, because that can get expensive, I would say first check like your diet, your stress levels, emotionally, what's going on in your life, your nervous system, like all of these things, and start regulating those. And then you can get a Dutch test. And even before that, your gut and your liver are so connected to your hormones. So this is actually a process that I went through is before I took a hormone test, I was looking at my gut and then also my liver health because it doesn't really make sense to get your hormones. I mean, you totally could do it to see where your hormones are at, but it doesn't really make sense to get your hormones tested if your gut and your liver are not functioning properly. So looking at those first, and then once you've cleaned your gut up and your liver is functioning healthy, like because the liver is really takes care of eliminating estrogen. And so if you a lot of cycle challenges are because there's excess estrogen. And so you want to make sure that your liver is functioning properly. Your liver is really attached to your gut. So those things I would look at first before looking at like the hormones are really like they're like almost the symptom, I guess you could say, for these things not like your gut and your liver not functioning properly. So I would look at that first and foremost. And again, like building a relationship with your cycle and creating a spiritual and emotional practice with it too is really important too, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's so true. Like, we are just like holistic beings, and like there's so many factors at play that are calling for our attention.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I was also wondering about contraception. So, obviously,
Mm.
you probably get a lot of people who are either on the pill, have come off the pill. And so, do you work with that with people? Well, I'm sure you do.
Yeah,
But yeah.
totally. I've worked with a lot of women getting off of the pill or an IUD or an implant, whatever else. And yeah, really what we focus on is again a lot of like eating healthy foods to support your gut and your liver. Your liver's probably going to have to detox a lot of like if you were on the pill and there was hormones that you're taking every single day, like your liver is going to work to help eliminate those, and also your gut. But yeah, when it comes to working with those women, I take them through really learning about their cycle because they haven't had their cycle in a little while, probably. So just supporting them through that process of getting their cycle back and creating a really healthy relationship to it, it's helping them start tracking it. And then I also take them through the fertility awareness method, which is you can use that method to as contraception or conception methods in the long run. But if they're wanting to go the natural route and not use birth control anymore, learning about that and learning how to track your cycle, your cervical mucus, your basal body temperature, your cervix height to see when you're in your fertile phase within your cycle, and using that as a way, as a contraception essentially, or just as a way to be mindful of when you're fertile essentially. And I will say, even if you're not using the fertility awareness method as a contraception method or conception method, learning this for yourself as a woman is like so powerful, because you get to know what's going on in your body when you're ovulating, when you're fertile, when you're not fertile, when you're about to start bleeding. And it also gives you a really great understanding of like if you're healthy, if you're ovulating in a healthy point of your cycle, or if it's too early or too late, if your cycles are irregular. And it really just gives you so much power because you have so much knowledge around your body in that way. So even if you're a single woman, you're not having like active sex right now, like that's honestly the best time to learn this for yourself, because you're just only your energy is like within you, I guess you could say. And you're also not, there's not like arousal fluids that can get into the way or whatever else. And so it's so powerful to learn this for any woman.
Amazing. So you do like the thermometer, right? Is there an app you recommend, or do you have your own way?
I recommend just doing it by yourself. I do like using Temp Drop. That's something that I've been using for the last, I don't know, if you like year and a half or so. It's a really great, it's like a band that you put on your arm, and it will then take your thermometer or your temperature at the lowest resting point. Because when you're using just a regular thermometer, you can get like a $10 thermometer at like like your local drugstore or pharmacy or Amazon or whatever, and that's great. It's a great starting point. But you have to be really accurate about when you take it, and then you take it the moment that you wake up in the morning, so that you have that lowest resting point. But that's really the second, like, I guess, data point that I work with. I work mainly with tracking your cervical mucus changes, because that will really show you, because really when you're looking at your temperature and when it rises because progesterone rises. And so right after ovulation, your estrogen will drop, your progesterone will rise. And so what you're confirming is that ovulation has happened, but you cannot track that you're in your fertile phase or that you're about to ovulate. And so this is when your cervical mucus changes. Like the more cervical mucus you have, or the more fertile cervical mucus you have, that means the closer you are to ovulation. And so that's what we're tracking to really understand when we're in our fertile phase. And I find it really important. Like that's, I would say, the number one thing to focus on, and not just your temperature, which I think like especially on social media, we see the temperature thing like through Temp Drop or through natural cycles or whatever. And it's great, but it's really so empowering to track your cervical mucus and just really being in tune with your body in that way. I personally also am not a big fan of apps, because it's so disconnecting to your body. The app is telling you where you're at in your cycle or what you should be experiencing. And that is, in my opinion, kind of goes against what cycle tracking is about. Like cycle tracking is about you learning about your body and listening to your body, and not an app telling you about that. So I try to work with technology as little as possible when it comes to cycle tracking and teaching women about their cycles.
Interesting. Well, I love that I just learned something new here, because this might sound weird, but how do you track your cervical mucus?
Yeah. Really, it's like what you see in your underwear, or if
Okay,
you,
that's what I was thinking. I was like, is it
yeah.
that, or am I missing something?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's like what you see in your underwear, or like if you're swiping, whatever you can see on the toilet paper. You can feel the sensation of like if it's wetter or drier down there. And really just cervical mucus needs to be present in order for sperm to survive. So sperm can't survive within your vagina without cervical mucus. And so that is really like what sperm need to get to the egg. And so when we're tracking our cervical mucus, we want to track the like which one is present. So again, coming closer to ovulation, it'll be more like translucid, or maybe even more this creamy cervical mucus, and then it gets wetter, and then you have that egg white cervical mucus, like that raw egg white. That's like probably day before ovulation. And so the more fertile cervical mucus we get, the closer we get to ovulation. Then after ovulation, we'll probably have no cervical mucus, or we'll have like more of this like sticky cervical mucus that dries up kind of fast. And again, the more that it's like the thicker cervical mucus, sperm can't really swim through that if you think about it. And so the more translucent it is, sperm can easily swim through it. And so that's what makes it more fertile. But
My body's
yeah, so it's
crazy.
yeah, it's like crazy how our body works in that way. And it's so cool to learn about this stuff
I
that
know. Well,
we never
thanks
were
so
taught.
much for sharing that, because like I'm laughing and almost creasing, because it's like we go through our whole lives being like, what the hell is coming
Yeah.
out of my vagina? And
Yes,
like,
yes.
no one, like, I would like ask my mom and she'd be like, don't talk to me about that, and it's like we're taught to like find it disgusting. And
Yeah.
like I did just run a women's retreat in Bali, and we were like going through the history of like how women have related to their vaginas, and how in
Mm,
society, there are all these ads of like, you're disgusting on your period, like you smell like fish. And it's
yeah.
and it's all this shame around it, and like
Yeah.
even talking about like, and the word as well, it's just like,
Mm,
people are like, and like I've got
yeah.
to a place where I'm very open, but like you're definitely like, so even when you're talking about it, I notice myself being like, ooh, yes. And it's just funny to like witness that in myself, and just like for anyone listening, like if you are feeling yourself getting a little bit, I don't know how you're feeling, a little bit like, ooh, whatever, like just know that that's, again, like not being educated about our own bodies, and like leaving
Totally.
it to the hands of men basically,
Hmm.
or just not connecting with what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, for sure. And like realizing that, I think I remember like back in high school, I was experiencing like the cervical mucus, and I have this like image in my head where I was in the one of the bathroom stalls in the high school, and I was like going to the bathroom, and there was so much cervical mucus present. Like I remember this, and I was like, "Ew! Like, is something wrong with me? Like, why am I
Yeah.
experiencing so much of this?" And and I also remember the whole like um what's the summer ease or whatever the brand is that you're supposed to clean your vagina with. It's like, and it's so bad for you. It ruins your pH and actually really harms your environment down there. But I like remember wanting to buy that because I was like, oh my god, something's wrong with me. Now I'm like, that was literally the sign of health, because cervical mucus shows that you're fertile, and when you're fertile, that means that you're healthy. Like having a
Yeah.
healthy ovulation is so vital for a woman's health. And when we're not fertile, that means something's really off, or if we're not ovulating in a regular way, like it really means that something in our body is needing support. And so cervical mucus, like if you're seeing that, experiencing that, like that's a really good sign. It means that you're healthy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
next time anyone who's listening sees that in their panties, go party, go celebrate.
Yeah, totally.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about was mental health in relation to hormones. Someone I know shared that they got severe depression from being on
Mm-hmm.
the pill.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just kind of navigating people through that, and like helping people through that process of like learning that when you regulate your hormones, that actually can shift your mental
Yeah.
health, and like if you've experienced that with people, and what you'd say
Yeah,
about it.
totally. Yeah. I mean, so something that we have to realize is that hormones really they make up our personality. And so when a hormone are suppressed, like through the pill, we suppress our hormones, and with that, we suppress our personality. We suppress who we are, um, and that makes sense for why people get the depression or anxiety. When the pill first started coming into our society, into our world, and there are so many women who were committing suicide because of it, because they're they just weren't feeling like themselves. And so
Mm.
that when our hormones, it just goes to show that our hormones are so important, and really supporting our hormones and our cycle means supporting who we are and our purest essence. It's really, really important to support our hormones because of that. And yeah, when we're experiencing depression or anxiety, I mean, I think most women will experience this right before their bleed, when hormones start dropping. We're in our late luteal phase, and that's when I think most women experience just like mental health challenges in that. And so obviously there's things we can do to support just having regular hormones during that time. It depends on the woman. I'm not going to go into that too much right now because it just depends on the woman and what's going on for her. But in all, I always say that a lot of the times when we look at it from an emotional standpoint, the luteal phase is all about connecting to our inner world and connecting to this like the archetypes attached to the luteal phase is the wild woman and the dark feminine. And these are archetypes and parts of ourselves as women that we were taught to hide and neglect, and that they weren't okay to show to society, right? This like primal self, this self that needs to connect to her inner shadow world and like become an alchemist to transmute pain into power and just allow her wild woman to rage and the anger to come out, and that's something that is not praised by society. Our society tells us stay in your light feminine qualities, the qualities that are easy to navigate. And so I think that there's this huge epidemic where women have never been taught to commune with these parts of themselves. And so when the luteal phase comes around, they're like, shoot, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm going to dissociate. I'm going to be like, there's going to be depression and anxiety that will arise for me. And also, a lot of the times during the luteal phase, there's certain addictions that can surface for us, whether it's food, whether it's watching a lot of TV, whether it's being on your phone, whatever it may be, because we don't know how to navigate these emotions that come up. And so it's a really hard phase, like a really hard phase of the cycle for a lot of women because of that. But when we learn how to commune and connect to these parts of us, like I always say, is it PMS or is it wild woman that's being suppressed? Because that's often what it is. It's just PMS is just a fancy way of saying you're suppressing your emotions and you're not actually allowing yourself to sit with them and really see what is present for yourself. And when we start doing that, our PMS starts becoming a lot easier, and we start understanding these versions of ourselves that want to be experienced. That's when we really can feel just our mental health improving in that too. So yeah, and I guess depression itself is really just like this like numbness that we haven't allowed ourselves to fully work through emotions at times, and there might just be the emotions that are frozen in our body, and so that's when depression can happen. And so creating this like somatic experience, like somatic body work, is amazing to help heal PMS and just cycle imbalances in general, because so many things are just stuck in our bodies, and we neglect coming into our bodies because of that. And so allowing ourselves to, or finding ways to really create the somatic practice of seeing what's in our body and what wants to be seen and noticed and witnessed and released, it's an incredible way to I think that's like the core essence of healing your PMS, in my opinion.
Yes. Wow, thanks so much for that. And it's been such a game changer. I'll just share personally that when you start to become aware of your cycle, like you do notice that is the time where like the darkness really comes in.
Yeah.
And just knowing like, I feel like sometimes your mind tries to find things to be mad or upset about instead of just feeling those emotions and knowing
Right.
that like it doesn't really matter what thoughts are coming up, because
Yeah.
it's kind of your mind trying to find reasons to get pissed off, when really it's just like honoring that sacred rage, honoring all the
Totally.
anger, and just allowing yourself to like let go of everything that's
Yeah.
been piled up that month or
Yeah.
all the years that you didn't honor your
Exactly.
emotions,
Yeah.
and just being with that and knowing like it will literally pass when your hormones shift.
Totally. And that's the beauty of living with your cycle, is like allowing yourself to release through that. And then with your bleed, really let go of it, let it release from your body. And then you do it all again in the next cycle. And with that, it's like anything that you also, if you didn't sit with your emotions throughout your whole entire cycle and you get pushing them away or whatever, it comes up so much stronger than in that late luteal phase within your PMS.
So would you say the same about cramps? It's like your body kind of calling you into like being with whatever is being inside your
Yeah,
body.
for sure. I think cramps can be a huge emotional thing where it's like maybe we don't want to let go of something. Maybe it's a big release of something that's like, yeah, whatever it may be. I definitely think it's an emotional thing. For the most part, emotions will manifest in your physical body, and we can obviously do so many things to help and support our physical body. But if we don't take care of our emotional world, it's going to be hard to heal the physical body.
The next thing I want to talk about is building a life according to your cycle. I think you're someone who really does that. Well, by what I've seen online. And I think it's just so inspiring because I think we're entering an era now where like this is gonna become the way to be. Well, it should have already been before, but I
Yeah.
just think people don't have a model of it.
Yeah.
People's parents didn't do that, and so, or grandparents or before that, so it's like getting an idea of what that would look like and what to aspire to, and also like how you help people navigate that in a world that doesn't accept it yet fully. Because if I look like somewhere like here, like I also coach people, and it's just like they're trapped in lives where their job won't really let them take time off, and
Yeah.
maybe we could speak a bit about how to navigate that and what an ideal world would look like in terms of
Yeah.
like how we would live in an ideal situation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely understand that where it can be hard to tap into your cyclical living and way when like you have to work and you're bleeding or whatever it may be. I feel like I'm very blessed that I can make my own schedule. And so with that, I very much can take care of myself through my cycle and can honor that for myself. And I wish that every woman had that ability to do so because it's so beautiful. It just creates so much more, yeah, peace, I guess, in my life in that way. But I always, um, when I work with clients and with women, I always just say that like do as much as you can, honor as much as you can, because that in itself is just going to really already create such huge changes in your life. So
Yeah.
let's say you are bleeding and you can't sit at home or just be at home and rest for those few days, and you have to still go out and work, or you have kids to take care of, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Think about how you can give yourself rest in other ways, whether it's like just mentally, maybe you take time off social media during that time. Maybe just you don't have any social plans and you just do the things you have to do. Maybe you meal prep for yourself before that if you can. So it's just finding ways that work for you that you can honor your cycle with. When it comes to like the cycle as a whole and like how to honor each of the different phases, really when we're moving into a new cycle, into like your follicular phase, it's all about new beginnings, planting new seeds, allowing yourself to daydream and bring in this like new cycle in that way. And then during ovulation, we're all about bringing creations into life and really tapping into our creativity in that way. And then during our luteal, it's all about harvest, as well as like sitting with our emotions, seeing what's coming up in that way. And then our bleed is all about rest, death, and rebirth. And so these themes, like how can you bring this into your day-to-day life, and knowing what phase of the cycle you're in, and just tapping into that, whether it's through work, whether it's through your personal life, your relationships, whatever it may be. And then also, obviously, you can cycle sync with your workouts and with what you're eating. Like that's a great way to honor your cycle too. So there's so many different areas that you can tap into to really allow yourself to become or honor that cyclical nature within yourself. You don't have to live in the middle of nowhere and just live on the land and homestead and like you don't have to become that version of a woman in order for you to be able to fully be part of this cyclical way. Like that's not what the cycle is about. It's about allowing it to become the container that holds you through your day-to-day life and whatever that may look like for you. And your cycle is going to look different to every other woman's cycle. And so it's learning your cycle through yourself and how you can honor it through these different phases through the day-to-day life.
I get there's just so many people with like the work I do as well. I think people always try to find reasons they can't, when really there's just so much scope and so much vastness to like how many different things you can incorporate that actually don't have to take that much time. And so yeah, just knowing, like, having this awareness and integrating things at whatever pace feels right for you will have an impact on your life.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just creating like ceremony in your day-to-day life in these small ways. I think that's really what it means to honor cycles in general, is creating these ceremonies. And something that this was during my retreat a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about like creating altars, because we made these like everyone was supposed to clay a symbol for their womb and then put that on their altar coming home. And so maybe you have one where you like an altar, and if you don't know what an altar is, it's essentially a little corner in your house where you put little special objects or a candle, flowers, whatever it is, to just honor whatever it is that you're trying to honor. And so you can have a cycle one where you honor you honor your cycle, and for each for each of the inner seasons that you're moving through, the different phases. So moving for inner spring, inner summer, inner autumn, inner winter, maybe you have different objects that you put up or that you honor that phase with. It's just a little way of creating ceremony in your day-to-day life. And so I love to just put a candle up. Like right now I'm about to ovulate and I have flowers. Like it's just like little things like that where you can just really honor yourself in the external environment that then supports you in the phase of the cycle that you're in, you know.
I love it. Like, I've got so into, through doing this work, like ritual, ceremony, and these are things I never did before, but that's such a feminine thing of just like loving pretty things and loving just making things like memorable and with intention and like love and
Yeah.
honoring yourself. And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, so many people live in such anger and like frustration with their bodies. And so this homecoming has just had so much depth, and like it's a journey, you know, like I'm still learning, and our body's just so amazing and complicated, and there's just so much wisdom in them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it really is so special when we start bringing that back into our day-to-day life. You'll feel a shift within yourself when you start doing it.
Beautiful. Well, I always ask my guests at the end if they have any last bits of wisdom that want to come through in the episode that haven't already, or anything you want to reiterate, because my show is called Wisdom Within. So yeah, is there anything else you want to share to anyone who's listening?
That's a good question. What just came to mind is when we're talking about coming back into your cycle and your feminine. I think a practice that's really powerful for women too is tapping into your sensuality, because that's something that's really lost as well. And I think a lot of times sensuality, we correlate it to sexuality, and it's different things. It doesn't actually, like, sensuality can often lead to sexuality, but sensuality is so innocent. It's so playful and loving and nurturing, and bringing sensuality into your everyday life. This is also, I think, when we think about nervous system regulation, there's such a masculine approach to it a lot of the times, where it's just like, oh, be present, and like don't do two things at once, and all these things. But it's really all about creating sensuality in your day-to-day life. And so bringing sensuality into the way that you eat your food, the way that you cook your food, the way that you dress yourself or put oils on you or lotion, whatever it is, like that in itself is such an honoring of your femininity as well, and an honoring of your cycle as well, which sounds like, just start doing it and you'll see what I mean.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
really
yes,
powerful.
I love that. I don't know if you know, I've trained in Tantra, and so I'm so
Mm,
into this work because I think there's obviously been a movement for self-care, and as you say, a lot of meditation, all these things are super masculine, and like this work, this sensuality that you're talking about is just, even though you're doing all these things, just bringing that intention and like doing it
yeah.
and like infusing it with like love. And I don't know if you've
Mm,
read the book Pussy, a Reclamation book, but
yes.
when she says the bit about decorating your house as if the most important person's coming over and that person's you, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I love that. It's just so
Yeah.
amazing. It
It
kind of
is.
connects to
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the bringing the sensuality into your everyday life. And we it's funny that you were saying talking about tantra and that you practice tantra, and we brought in tantra exercises during my retreat. And a lot of it had to do with sensuality. And it was incredible to see how these women, just the shift in their energy after they did these
Oh,
exercises. It's like insane. And I'm getting messages from a lot of them where they're like, they're sending me videos of how they're like this one of my retreat participants, she's like filling up her propane gas, and she's like bringing sensuality while I fill up my gas. It's just like so cool to see how they're bringing it back into their day-to-day life, and how it really does shift the way that you approach
oh
life
my
as a whole.
god.
It's amazing.
Yeah, we did that on our retreat. It was like an erotic power retreat. And so
Yeah,
it was like just seeing the shift in their energy and like coming back to play, and like these things are so natural to us, but yet we've just suppressed all of them and just everyone's so
totally.
serious like robots. And I'm like, guys, let's have some fun. I mean, Rebecca, you can share about obviously you do one-to-one coaching, right? And then you have retreats.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Share
So I
about
do so I do one-to-one coaching. I have retreats. I want to start doing more of those because they're so powerful. And then I am also in the middle of building out a group coaching program because I just love working with groups and women. I think that's so powerful when women come together and circle in that way. I have a couple ebooks in my bio on my Instagram. And there's so much more to come, but that's what I
yeah.
have right now.
Well, stay tuned because she's doing amazing things. As she said, like, this is all only started a year and a half ago, more or less, and she's
Yeah.
doing great things.
Thank
So, thank you for being
you.
here, and I hope whoever's listening gets inspired. So, let us know what shifts you make, and we're here to support you in that journey.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so much for
much.
having me. It's such an honor to be here.
Bye.
I wanted to let you guys know a bit about the events I have coming up here in London. So one is Emotions as Alchemy and the other is a Connection to Self workshop. And both of these are totally related to what we speak about in this episode and what I speak about in many of these episodes. So if you're interested in learning more about returning to yourself or experiencing that or doing it again, because it's something that we all do continuously, so come along to those. I'm also available for one-to-one work, and I'm also helping on 2 retreats next year, which I'm going to do an episode about soon. So if you're interested in any of those things, please reach out, and I'm sending so much love. Bye!